Hey, no, we aren't going to have sounders.
We're not?
No, because they're all sitting over there on the other desk.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Welcome NASCAR fans. We got this figured out. Here we go. Dan can do it. Dan, you do the sound effects and. Well, anyway, welcome to another live broadcast of the
just never know.
That's all right. Steve is the production effects guy, and we're going to give him a pass today because this is Steve's birthday. Steve's 65 years old today, and he has excuses for this stuff. Happy birthday, Ronkowitz.
Hey, thanks. I'm not quite as old as you, so 65 not yet, but I feel like it at times. But
yeah, we've been doing this thing for a long time. Dan's kind of a rookie. He's not used to these mistakes like we are.
Yeah, he really expects us to do it right.
Right before you're supposed to hear that and then boogity 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 and all that stuff. So anyway, welcome to this week's edition of the live NASCAR Hangout on Pit Row. I'm Charlie Turner. You've been seeing just a minute ago, birthday boy Steve Ronkowitz over there. Hey, Steve-O, say hi.
Hey, hello.
And Dan Beaver down in Texas. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Doing great.
All right. With any luck, we'll be joined at some point today by NASCAR photog Beth Ann Heisler, but we'll see how that works out. Anyway, so big race this past weekend, second race of the chase. Really interesting. Dan and I were talking earlier. If I had to put a hashtag on it, I think it might be like hashtag carnage, maybe chaos. Did you like it? You like the way this is turning out, Steve? The way it's confusing everybody with all the favorites kind of, other than the Penske guys.
I was going to say you could put hashtag Penske on there too. So
yeah, you could.
Didn't you pick Logano to win this week?
I did. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, we both did.
Yeah, you both did. And I didn't see that happening. I didn't see two races in, both Penske cars being in the chase. But, boy, I guess they do somewhat have it figured out. God, you make you wonder how they can be so good and Roush can be so bad.
Yeah, that's my question. That's the thing I was thinking about 3/4 of the way through the race when all these Roush cars are nowhere to be found. Not even sniffing. They're not even sniffing top tens really.
Yeah.
And Penske's dominating. Like, what's going on there? You got any ideas on that, Dan? I mean, what can you figure out what could be the difference there?
No. I would guess that it's some sort of dysfunction at Roush, and the fact that they're getting along at Penske, and that's making a difference on the track. You would think these guys were professional enough that wouldn't be the case, but Edwards, it's not that surprising for Biffle. It's certainly not that surprising for Stenhouse that they would struggle. You would think Edwards would have had a better year than this, but then he had that contract stuff going on, so. If you got to assume the engines are kind of the same, it's happening in the setup someplace, and I think that is probably because of the dysfunction in the team.
You know, and at the racetracks, Ford Motorsports their presence is big, and they hover over those teams, and that's their two teams. You can say whatever you want to say about Richard Petty Motorsports, but it's really Roush and Penske, and for a long time it was Roush and everybody else. And now it's like Penske and everybody else. You mentioned the look at that. Beth Ann's going to join us early. Hey, Beth, what's going on?
Hey.
Welcome. You just got the shout out that you made the pick for the win this week, just like I did. So congratulations. So anyway, looking at you talk about the dysfunction in a team. Carl Edwards is jumping from Roush to Joe Gibbs, where that looks like the other most dysfunctional team in the chase right now. And there was a lot of talk about what was going on after that race there. What do you guys think about that?
Well, he's moving from one oval to combined ovals, and it sure doesn't look like it's going to be a heck of a lot better.
You did it again. Do it again.
How do you do that?
I don't know.
The Toyota double oval thing.
Looks sort of lewd, actually.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
I think I dated her in high school. But what the hell were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So how is Carl Edwards going to go into that dysfunctional team and make everything all happy? It doesn't seem like it. Just by them changing crew chiefs all around is going to
Well,
fix
he could
that.
go in there and beat up everybody that's shorter than him. That might help, but
Um, that would be an interesting scenario. I don't know that any of them are exactly giants, but so it digresses a little bit. But I just don't understand how Roush can be so bad. But maybe it's partially the fact that Carl's leaving and there isn't anybody else with any talent there.
Ooh, there's a statement.
Well, you know, with all due respect, Ricky Stenhouse doesn't exactly strike fear in the hearts of everybody that he's racing against.
He's having a hard time beating his girlfriend most weeks, I've noticed.
Don't say beating girlfriend in a sports talk.
You're right.
Outperforming is a better term. But, you know, and Greg Biffle, when was the last time Greg Biffle, you know, struck terror in the hearts of his competition? So none of those guys are really, you know, anything to be worried about, I don't think. So, you know, Penske's getting all the good stuff. You would think.
And some of that may be there too. The board knows who's going to get them to the championship, or who's going to contend for the championship. So you're going to back the people that are going to get you the furthest down the road. It probably a little bit of that in there too.
Well, you just have to wonder. They get engines from the same place, and you know, you always have to wonder when these guys put these engines together. Do they know that this one's better than that one, and you know, this one's number 1, this one's number 2, this one's number 3, and then you have to decide who's getting what where? Because you sure wouldn't think that they would just throw them into a hat, would you?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that they're that good to know what they did differently. I think they probably try to build them the same. But we've always seen this with leased engines or sold engines all along. When they get sold to a smaller team, the team doesn't know what to do with them necessarily, and they do get to still tune them up. They still make changes once they get to the track. So whatever changes they're making is making the difference in the horsepower. In this case, I think we're really seeing the difference in getting that horsepower down to the track. And Penske, Keselowski, and Logano have figured out something to get more of that horsepower adhered to the track, and that's making it look like they've got more horsepower.
You know, 4 or 5 years ago, the push for these big teams was to go more teams. Jack Roush was stopped when he had 5 cars on the racetrack. They put the 4-car limit in place for teams and kind of grandfathered him when he had 5 because they knew that Mark Martin was going to retire at the time. It looks almost to me like Penske might be onto something new with 2. Richard Petty Motorsports a lot the same way. They seem to be getting better results by concentrating on a smaller number of teams, maybe concentrating their resources. I mean, nobody has enough. I don't think anybody has enough talent to put 4 full teams out on a racetrack. We've seen it at Hendrick Motorsports. They can never seem to get that number 5 team to go. You know, what do you think? I mean, I'm just tossing something out there.
Well, the other thing is, if you look even at Hendrick, who has 4 cars, they really kind of divide those 4 cars up into 2-car teams. The way they have
teams, exactly.
You know, they have it set up, you know, so that these 2 cars work together. These 2 cars are in the same shop. So from that standpoint, you know, in a way, they're kind of working on that 2-car thing as well. So it almost makes you wonder why Joe Gibbs Racing would be in a hurry to go to a 4-car setup, other than if maybe they're looking to do something similar where they have 2-car teams and think by doing that you no longer have the third wheel involved in this thing. Maybe by going to 4 it will help the others. Could be a possibility.
That's possible. I want to ask Beth, because Beth didn't just pick Joey Logano to win, and she's picked Logano to win the chase. What are you seeing, Beth? I mean, what makes you lock in on those guys?
I don't know. He just has this aggressive, hungry, you know, like he is really focused on winning this thing. I mean, there's just something about his attitude and so that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, he's definitely got confidence. There's no question. There's confidence there. What's up, Dan?
The new chase format's going to fall into his hand too. I don't think that Logano can put together 10 perfect races, and that's what it would have taken under the old format. But I do think that he can win at will, or he can finish in the top 5 at will, and that's going to keep him advancing. Gordon finished second last week and 26th this week. Horrible race. That would have taken him out of contention normally, and it would have dropped him down into that danger zone along with Matt Kenseth and all the guys below him if it hadn't been for the second place finish. So I think talk about how one bad race can spoil your chase. In this new format, I think one good race can kind of get you to that next level. Certainly it does if you win, but even a second place finish is there, and Logano's got that ability to finish in the top 5 at will. He's not going to struggle 2 or 3 races in a row. So I think he's going to keep qualifying that way. Under the old format, don't know that he could have done it because he's going to have a bad race during the chase. And someone else won't. Someone like a Brad Keselowski might not have a bad race, but you get it down to that final crapshoot at Homestead, and it's anybody's race.
Yeah, anybody that's good there could win there. That's interesting. Well, we've gone through half of our show talking about the race this past weekend, which is not normal for the show. A lot of times there's just not a lot to talk about. So NASCAR's doing something right with this chase thing. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but there's definitely interest, and they broke the preseason up into trying to get to the chase. Now they've broken the chase up into these 4 little mini chases. It's kind of wild.
I can tell you what it is. They plotted the chase. A book or an article has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They've got that going 3 times: a beginning, a middle, and an end. So all 3 of these the races have that critical component that it takes, and they probably are smart enough to have figured that out. We're just now catching up.
So Stephen King wrote the NASCAR rules. There you go, Steve. How's that?
Yeah, I like that. It makes perfect sense, actually, if you think about it. But you look at Keselowski, and this is the kind of thing we brought up last week, was that it leaves a lot of different scenarios. Keselowski won. He's in the chase. So now all of a sudden he is out there, and all he has to do for the next 2 races, the second and third race in this first group, he can just go out and try and win races and piss people off. It appeared that he did both of them, at least early on in that race, because there were a lot of people that weren't too happy with the way he was racing. And he was racing to win the race because he had, there was nothing else for him to do out there than to try and win the crazy thing.
Let's throw some controversy out there. I kind of want to break this because I want to go to get our shell read in today while we're about halfway through this, and there's more to talk about the chase and what happened this past weekend. But today I always put up a question on our Facebook page to try to spur comments for our shell comment of the week. And this week I put up in 10 words or less. I think it was 10 words or less. Yeah, it was 10 words or less. Describe your ideal race day. And we've gotten a lot of comments. I think 15 comments so far today, which is pretty good for as late as I put it up. And we're gonna pick the best of those, and somebody's gonna get a $50 Shell gift card. Steve, why don't you tell how that works? Because then I want to ask you guys. I want to give you, while Steve's reading this, your chance to think about what your perfect race day is.
Well, you can submit your Shell Saver Card comment of the day, whether you talk about what Charlie posted or anything else. You can take home that $50 Shell gift card. Plus, anytime that Joey Logano, driver, that 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford, wins a 2014 points race, as he did this week, Shell Saver Card holders save 22 cents per gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-enriched gasoline or Shell diesel just by using your Shell Saver Card tomorrow, which is Wednesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. They win. Wait a second, John Sterling. I don't do John Sterling. After the race, make sure that that offer is only valid up to 25 gallons. Go to shell.us/Wednesday for details. I hate John Sterling.
Now, you hate the Yankees. You don't hate John Sterling.
No, I don't like John Sterling either.
Okay, all right. So anyway, if you have a Shell Saver card, you go out to Shell gas station tomorrow. You can save yourself $11 on 50 gallons of gas. So that's pretty good stuff. So okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you pick in 10 words or less, describe your perfect race day. I'm going to hit you first, Dan.
Nachos, beer, and a quiet place.
There you go.
To watch.
And you don't care what racetrack, do you?
No.
That is your description.
Like them all.
That's right on. Okay. Hey, Steve, what's yours?
Perfect race day is, I would say up on the hill at Mid-Ohio, probably early fall, about 70 degrees, Pepsi in one hand, and a big thing of popcorn.
There you go. You stole part of mine. Beth Ann, what's yours?
I'd just like to sit. I think I'd like to sit in somebody's pit box the whole race.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You're usually working your tail off at most of the races we go to.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down and relax. That'd be kind of cool. Sitting in a pit box would be cool. My perfect one would be kind of similar to Steve's. Would be Mid-Ohio, sitting on the hill down there in the corkscrew, watching the Sports Car Club of America National Championships, which they don't run there anymore. Used to go every fall. It was great. See all those different cars running and amateur racers. Just love it. Mid-Ohio is such a beautiful place, especially in the fall, as Steve said. Cool place to watch. So there's a ton of comments. Get your comment if you haven't, and you get a chance to win that. And nobody said NASCAR.
Well, I think Dan's goes without saying.
Dan will go. Yeah,
he's a NASCAR slap.
His would be NASCAR. He would be anywhere. I'm convinced. IndyCar, whatever. He'd take it all, right?
Yeah. I've done work for the World of Outlaws. I love dirt track racing. I love short track racing. So, no, I like all racing. Not a real big fan of drag racing. Other than that,
I almost went sitting at Stavelot or Stavolo, however they pronounce it, in the rain at Spa, watching Dan Gurney come around there in 1968. That would have been pretty cool, but I was trying to be realistic.
Well, you only would have been, what, 14?
68? 15, actually, asshole.
Well, thank you.
But there you go.
I'm not the one on the left.
No, that's true. Okay, so next week we go to Dover. I mean, there's really, much as I'd like to talk about other stuff that's going on, this is what's going on. And NASCAR, I think they've really nailed it with this chase thing. At least if you care at all about what's going on in NASCAR and the Sprint Cup Series, I mean, they've got the conversation going. So it'll be interesting to see if this carries over when there aren't 16 drivers involved, when there's down to 12 and then down to 6 and that kind of thing.
Well, even when they get down to 12, that is what has been normal for the past few years. We went from a 10-man chase the first 2 years to a 12-man chase, 13-man last year. So that's normal. We don't hit kind of an abnormal chase again until we get down to that round of 8. And at that point, there's going to start to be a little more fans get a little more tired, but the intensity picks up. I think one of the things that we learned to such a degree this week was just how volatile the points are going to be in the second and third races of each round, and that's going to get worse with every passing round. Yeah,
and you've got that in the next. Is it the next round when you've got the Talladega thing looming there too? And that really is going to loom on these guys. That could totally take, 3 guys that are sitting there ready to go into the next round and take them out.
Well, think about it,
without them doing anything wrong.
Think about if Talladega was next week. We've got 9 drivers within 18 points of one another. I mean, that would be just frightening to go into that race knowing that you're 18 points ahead of dead last. And we're probably going to see that. We've got 2 similarly configured non-app tracks to lead off the next round. There's no reason to think that the 12 chase contenders are not going to dominate those 2 races. So you're going to get to Talladega with a really tight points battle. And something out of their control is going to happen. I've said it for years, and I'll say it when we get there. Talladega should not be in the chase. Should not be a point.
Wouldn't that be something if it got down to that and you had 5 of the chasers get wrecked with 100 laps to go in a big wreck.
Well, and
And the one that gets into the next round is the one that's able to tape the car back together the best and tool around it at minimum speed for more laps. That would be really compelling, wouldn't it?
Nobody's going to care if it's Allmendinger who lips into this round, or if it's Biffle, or if it's any of the guys that really shouldn't have. But think about this. What if Keselowski, Logano, Jeff Gordon, and Jimmy Johnson all get wrecked in that final race?
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt Jr., and they're the ones that miss the round of 8. That's the only way that NASCAR would even acknowledge that there was something possibly wrong. As long as it's not one of those guys, they're not going to care.
Huh.
But we're ahead of ourselves.
We are. We go to Dover this coming week, and Dover's kind of. I know we're going to get into. In fact, we might as well do it now. Let's talk about the fantasy implications of Dover, because that's the story. I think is the next race in the chase, and Dan knows more about what is likely to happen than anybody sitting on his broadcast. I think, except for maybe Beth. She seems to be able to get these things right. But so what do you think? Where we talk, Dover's usually to me is kind of predictable in the past.
It can be, but it also
change it?
We can also get big one crashes at Dover. Those stretches are so narrow that they can get bottled up pretty easily. And when that crash happens at the front of the field, like it did a couple of years ago, I think Tony Stewart was involved in it somehow. I'm not sure if he triggered it or if he was the first car to get turned around and somebody else. And we had something like a 22-car pileup at Dover. So I think it's kind of telling that 2 of the most treacherous tracks are the elimination races in the first 2 rounds, Dover and Talladega. If they avoid that, then yes, it becomes a predictable race. It's one of the, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's got one of the top 15 streaks in a given year. So you can look back, and you have to look back and do the handicap based on who ran well this fall. Those are the drivers that are going to make up your list of favorites and your list of dark horses. And then you hope that they don't get swept into something. Obviously, you've got Jimmy Johnson with back-to-back victories. He won this race last year. He won this race in the spring. He hasn't looked the same. And kind of like Kyle Busch last week, coming into New Hampshire with 3 consecutive second-place finishes. You really didn't think it was going to be another second-place finish, but you did realize that probably was a good predictor of the fact that he was going to get at least a top 10. With Jimmy Johnson, his back-to-back victories, he's got another victory back in 2012, another one back in 2010, swept 2009. Obviously, if he struggles here, then we know that something is wrong with the 48 team. But even if he struggles here, he's going to finish in the top 10. That makes him a good pick, and it makes him a low-risk, high-reward driver. I like to kind of categorize people that way in the Yahoo previews. So Johnson's got to be a favorite just because he's low risk. If he slips, he's probably going to finish somewhere around 5th. If he runs well, he's going to challenge for the victory. But then you've got some good dark horses in there too. Hate to call Keselowski a dark horse because of how he's raced recently, but how he's raced at Dover kind of makes him an all-or-nothing driver. He's got a victory back in 2012. He's got a top 5 in 2013. He's got a second-place finish this year. He's going to run up there again. Tony Stewart had a top 10 here. He had a victory last spring. So he should be a dark horse, but he hasn't shown as much. Paul Menard had a 10th place finish this spring. He's going to have to be a dark horse this week, I think, even though I've got him ranked pretty low on the Yahoo story that'll get posted a little bit later today. But you're going to look to what drivers did this spring, I think, to get your favorites for this week. Specifically, we talked about Johnson. I think he's got to be your favorite. Jeff Gordon, I think, has got to be ranked 2nd in Yahoo's Group A. He's done well enough. Last week, he was battling for the top 5 before whatever his tire problem was. That's happened to him at least once or twice in the past this season. He's been able to rebound. The only difference now is that because the points are so volatile and we're going into the elimination race, then he can't afford to have another problem that could make the team just a little conservative and keep them from battling in the front of the pack. Once you get in the middle of the pack at Dover, you're in danger. Kevin Harvick, the team didn't make any mistakes last week. The mistakes at Stewart-Haas got pushed into the number 41 team. So Harvick's got to be that other driver. And now you've got 3 people at the top of Group A that are constantly challenging for victories if we get Johnson back. And that gives you a good enough pool that you really don't need to look further down for other drivers unless you need a differentiator. If you do, Dale Earnhardt Jr. finally got back into the top 10. I think he'd gone 4 races without a top 10 before last week's race. He's got a good record at Dover. He's got the baseline Hendrick setup to put on his car. And Gordon passed the mantle, I think, to Jimmy Johnson. It could eventually get passed down to Dale Earnhardt Jr., and he could become one of the best drivers at Dover.
I don't know. I see a foot. Is there a foot in the foot?
Not sure what that is. It sounded like me, but I'm not sure where it came from.
I don't know where that came from. That's wild.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a visitor to the studio.
Ah,
Oh,
that's a WSYL visitor. Okay, all right, we got that.
All right.
It's okay.
In Group B, Keselowski, Logano, but you've Jamie McMurray has been the class of that field for a while now. He has let's see exactly what he's got in strings of top 10s at the moment. He's got a 3-race top 10 streak and a top 15 streak that goes all the way back to Pocono for Watkins Glen. He wants to prove that he belongs in the chase. Dover isn't necessarily his best track, but I don't think it matters right now. Jamie McMurray, I think, is a must-have if you've run out of your Keselowski and Logano allocation. Paul Menard I mentioned as a solid dark horse. There are a lot of dark horses this week. I think Amber could be another one. So you only want to gamble on one of those guys. But Menard's not going to be all that popular, so he makes a good gamble. And Denny Hamlin. Hard to believe he's going to have 2 bad races in a row. Last time when he struggled at Richmond on a short flat track where he should have dominated, he came back and ran relatively strong the next week. So his bad race at New Hampshire could galvanize the team unless there's lingering bad blood from the dust up on the radio. I think Denny Hamlin makes a good choice. Down in Group C, same old cast of characters. Larson, Patrick, Dillon, in that order, are the drivers that you're going to decide who you're going to start based on allocation management. And beyond them, this is one of those races where if you don't use one of your allocations for those guys, Allgaier, Sorensen, Castle, Annette, they're not going to be close enough to do you much good. Allgaier has a tendency, like last week, to stay close enough to the lead lap that if there's high attrition, he can get some good finishes. And I think he had a mid-20s finish at Dover this spring based on that same kind of thing. So in a pinch, you could use him, but you're going to be better served by taking one of the 3 marquee drivers, even if it means that you are down to just one allocation on any of those given drivers. This is not a race where you want to risk because a lot can happen, and it tends to happen to inexperienced drivers before it happens to the experienced drivers. And that's my take.
All right. Do I have that right? You actually have Danica ahead of Dillon?
Based on experience, I think this is a track where her 2 additional races worth of experience is going to serve her well. And she ran with the top 10 last week for a bit. Got shuffled out towards the, but she had a top 10 capable car, and she's done good at Bristol a time or 2. Yeah, I've got her ranked 2nd.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I heard that right. That's all. All right, so we're to the point now where we got to put everybody on the spot. I'll go first this week since I haven't gone for a while. I've got to go with Jimmy Johnson here this week. I believe that he's going to come on in this chase and be one of those four at the end, and one of the two that you're probably talking about going into that last race. But if he's going to be that guy, he's got to show it here pretty soon, I think. So I'm going with Johnson. Steve, who you got?
I am going with the long shot Clint Boyer.
Clint Boyer. Why Clint Boyer? What made you think Clint Boyer?
Desperation moves. Time to make something happen. And if Clint's going to make anything happen, this is the time. So I think it could happen. Just a gut feeling.
All right. Well, Beth, you've been right 2 weeks in a row. So who you got this week?
I'm going with Kyle
pressure's
Larson.
on. Go for Kyle Larson. There you go.
Yeah.
Whoa. A Kyle Larson call, not from Steve.
Yeah. I thought about that, but
He's got to win somewhere, doesn't he?
I think he got to, and he had 11th in the spring, so he barely missed the top 10. He fits in that sweet zone.
All right, so Beth's got Kyle Larson. I guess I might pay attention to that if I were you. Dan, who you got? You're the sage in this whole thing.
I try not to take the same driver as anybody else, but this week I've got to sadly agree with you. I'm going with Johnson.
All right, so we just killed Jimmy Johnson's chance of winning this race.
So Jimmy Johnson now will not advance to the next round, and
yeah. We'll see. He has to be a good chase. He did win both the races last year, and would have won. He won the last two races here. Is that right?
Yeah.
And would have won the one before that if he hadn't been jumped the restart on the final. So it would have been 3 in a row. So I gotta like Jimmy here, and I still think that team's got what it takes. So we'll see. We'll come back next week and talk about all this. We'll watch the race on Sunday, and Dover's one of my favorite racetracks to watch. I just kind of like the way that place looks. The concrete and the bridge that goes over the track, and it's just it's banked and short. I like it, so I'm looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for watching this week. Make sure that you, if you want to take this fantasy thing to the next level, go read Dan's 2 articles that he puts up. 2 places that he puts articles up. The main thing is his Yahoo game recap at yahoosports.com. That's usually 20, 25 pages worth of priceless information. If you're a fantasy player, that'll be at yahoosports.com later today. Dan, is that right?
Yeah, it'll be up by tonight.
Later. Okay, so tonight, so certainly by tomorrow morning, and then also read his analysis at rotoworld.com. And then Dan and I'll come back on Thursday. We'll do a kind of a real-time fantasy show about this on Thursdays around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's Dan. Follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Race. Follow Steve on Twitter at Bench Racing, and go to his Facebook page and wish him happy birthday. Send him some Jeff Gordon pictures. He loves that stuff. And then, of course, there's Beth Ann over there. You can follow her at mymetrotoledo.com and read all of watch. She's got some terrific photos up at onpitrow.com. Make sure you get over there and take a look and leave some comments for her. She's very, very underrated NASCAR photographer, I think, and we're lucky to have her. And that's it for this week. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday at about 2 or 3 o'clock, depending on when we're available. So enjoy the races, everybody. See you next week.